Hello and welcome to GTO Coach and Go. I'm Jim Dellerman with Group Travel Odyssey, and I want to thank you all for joining us again today. Before we get started, just a reminder that if you have not followed us on LinkedIn, please do that at Group Travel Odyssey. Also, if you've not subscribed to our YouTube channel and you're watching us on YouTube, if you click down on that little box in YouTube that says subscribe, also ring the little bell and it's going to give you a notification anytime that we do have new content on our YouTube channel. So I do want to get started today because what we're going to do is something a little bit different. We're going to jump around a little bit with content. We've got a lot of questions, or we've received a lot of questions over this past week or so that we figured we might go ahead and go through some client questions, some user questions. And also, as we are going through this, if you have other questions, please go ahead and submit those as well. You can do that in the comments section. If you cannot get that typed in, you can also email me a question at jim@gtonetwork.com, and then we will go ahead and answer those questions as time permits today. So what I'd like to do is bring on our guest. Our guest is somebody that everybody who's on here knows very well. So we're going to bring our lead navigator, Keith Snowd, on with us. Hi, Keith. How you doing?
Hey, Jim. I'm doing great. How are you today?
Doing very well. Doing very well. So as I was saying, we're going to go through a lot of different questions that we received from our users. And if you do have those questions still, or if you have more questions as we go on, please make sure you do submit those questions, and we will make sure to try to get to as many of those as we possibly can today. So Keith, one of the questions that we received recently is there a way that you can add 2 contacts to a proposal?
That's a great question. And unfortunately, I have to frame it in a short-term answer and a long-term answer. The long-term solution is going to take some time to make that flow seamlessly. But we did, as we do with our community, we really try to find ways to use the system as effectively as we can right now. So we have created what I'm going to call a workaround, not a solution, but a workaround now. And so I'd like to share that with everyone now. It's not the final solution, but it is a solution that will allow you to at least track a secondary contact to a trip. And so I'll share my screen here real quick. And here we go. So as you can see, I am in a trip record, and you can see that information here at the top. I will actually make my screen just a titch bigger for you. Okay. You can see that I'm in a trip record. It doesn't matter which trip record. And you'll see there's a new field here called secondary contact link. It's right next to your primary contact. Okay. And what this is going to enable you to do is you're going to be able to create a link. It's just a hyperlink to a secondary contact for this trip. It's not actually connected to the trip. It is just a link so that everyone knows, hey, this is the secondary contact on this trip. All you would do, and I know many people work with multiple windows open. I have a second version of QuickBase open here in Sales Manager, but this one I'm in contacts. So as you can see, I'm in a contact record. I'm actually just going to go up to the top here. I'm going to copy that URL. Real simple. I'm going to go back to the other record, throw it into edit mode. Just takes a second here. And then what I'm going to do is I am going to paste that URL right into that secondary contact link field. And save and close. So now, when I'm in this record, this trip record, you'll see I've got the primary contact. But then if I just hit this button, this hyperlink, it's going to take me right to that secondary contact for this trip. So, like I said, not a permanent solution, but a temporary workaround so that you can at least identify a secondary contact for a trip. So I hope that answers the question.
That's a great workaround for the time being. So, if you do have more than one contact, you copy that link and you put it in there, and all you have to do is click on that link then, and you'll be able to pull up that second contact. So
well, and as you remember, when you're in other apps, for example, in Trip Manager or in Group Accounting, on those pages, you have buttons at the top of the page to take you to that Sales Manager trip record. So it's really easy for you to navigate back and forth, and you'll still be able to see that secondary contact. So like I said, it's a workaround for right now. We're working on a more permanent solution for that. But at least this way, you'll be able to identify some of those secondary contacts. So.
Excellent. Another question we had a couple weeks ago, we did a GTO Coach and Go on the reporting features. And we've had questions about that, and we're working through some of the customization of reporting and things like that. But one question that came up, which is a really great question, is can you export the reports and the tables to an Excel spreadsheet or to, another version that you can go ahead and download? Is there a way to export those reports?
So any report, Jim, can be exported. So okay. That's not an issue. However, when you're managing data, and I know that you and Sierra did a really great session on managing data, you want to spend as little time outside of the system as you possibly can. So because if you make changes to data outside of the system and it doesn't get changed in the system, as you mentioned in your sessions, that can be a problem. So it's important to, I want to say, control how much data gets pulled out of the system and pulled back in and things like that. So those features can be turned on and off. So it is something that I would say absolutely it can be done on any report, okay? But I think that as our user companies need to sit and talk about where we want to allow that, where we don't want to allow that, the reasons why, and maybe even who is allowed to do it.
Right.
Because all of those things can be built into user roles in the system. Right now, they might be turned off. So whoever asked this question, I think, and you might have said that and I missed it. Sorry. It just might be turned off. The feature might be turned off right now because it's possible with anything. So, right. But again, I would encourage you from a data management standpoint to sit and talk about it and not just turn it on everywhere. Right. Because what are the reasons why you need to do it, and also, as you explore those reasons why, that might be a really good conversation to have with with somebody from the GTO team. Because you might identify things that you want to do with that data that we go, maybe we should build that into the system so that you can do it in the system instead of outside of the system. So, those conversations, the knee-jerk reaction is make them all available. But I think that it's for us to be better stewards of the data that we're managing and our customers and everything like that. It's good for us to kind of step back for a minute, talk about it, and make sure that we're setting it up in a way that's going to help us be more efficient in the future.
Right. And if as a user and as a user company, you do find that you don't have those permissions in the availability to export the data, and you do need them, you can contact us, and Keith, Corey, people on our team can go ahead and change that permission for you. So it's not that it doesn't have the functionality. It's that if your company desires for you to be able to go ahead and do that exporting for reporting purposes, if you need to take stuff and put it into another accounting program or something, you can have us go ahead and turn those permissions on. So don't hesitate. Again, contact us. Let us know.
Well, and the other side of that too is remember, all of those tables also have the grid edit feature.
Right. So
anytime you're in one of those reports, any of those fields that are editable, you can actually edit just like you would on a Microsoft Excel document. You can edit those fields in a grid edit format. So, a lot of times if you think through, I want to do X, Y, and Z, you might actually just be able to do it right there. You don't need to export it out and do that and then have to worry about going back in and updating each record or, asking us to do an upload, things like that. It might be something you can actually create. We can modify the report so that you have the grid right in front of you and you can make those changes right in that screen. So,
and again, it's why it's good to have a discussion with us, because if it depends on what you want that report to do. If you're looking to change things within the system, the grid edit feature would be the best option, because any of the changes that you do would automatically be there in the system. So instead of taking it and exporting it and changing it and then importing it back in or having us import it back in, it would be good to use that function at that point. So, depending upon what you're using the report for, we can help you out with that.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Another question, we've been getting questions, especially since we did more information on data management and suppliers as well. We've been getting more information on how to add suppliers and how to add pricing and product contacts, things like that. If there's somebody that's not in there that you need, how do you go about doing it? So now it's going to be my turn to share the screen. So let me go into the system here, and I'm going to share our test environment here. Right now, I am in Sales Manager. Excuse me, I'm in Supplier Manager, and I do have the entire screen there. If you scroll to the bottom of this, if you have done a search, if you have searched for your suppliers in here, and that supplier is not present, so you've gone through and checked for it, then at the bottom of this screen, there is a place for you to request a new supplier. And there's even a little bit of an explanation as to what you need to do before you click this button. So it tells you about searching for the supplier. It tells you if that supplier there and if product and pricing is not there, what you should do as well. So if you're just requesting a brand new supplier that's not in the system, then you would hit the request new supplier button, and that would bring up a field here, and you would just fill this in. And what that does is it gives you a chance to put in the description, user company, which would be whatever your company is, so we know who it's coming from, your name and stuff like that. And you could go ahead and give us as much information as you can. So if you have a document that they have sent to you with their pricing, any other information, if it's a hotel, and you have all of their information about entry and the number of rooms and stuff like that, we can attach that to the supplier record, so you can add that document to it as well before you save and close. And when you hit save and close, it automatically generates that help desk ticket number, and it will send the information to us so we can go ahead and get that put in. So that is basically how to do a new supplier. So what if you already have a supplier in there, but you don't have the right contact, or you don't have the product and pricing? All you would have to do, and I'm going to go to Planet Hollywood just as a test here. So I'm going to go in to the record for Planet Hollywood and click on that little eyeball so you can view the record. Once you're in here, if you notice that you're going down and looking at pricing, and the pricing that you want is not in here, or if you're in contacts and the contact that you want is not in here, there is a button right here on this screen that says request new product, pricing, or contact. It's great to use this because you don't have to back out of this record. It's also great to use this because it's going to automatically attach it to this supplier. So we know that the information that you're going to be requesting is going to be for this Planet Hollywood at Disney Springs. So it automatically will tell you that. And again, you put all the information you need in here. You put your username or your user company in here so we know who it's coming from. And it gives you a chance to also, if you have a document, you can add that at that point as well. Once you hit save and close, again, that will open up that ticket and it will send that information off to us, so that we can go ahead and get the new contact put in. We can get the new pricing or the new product put in as well. So again, don't be afraid to go in and do that. But again, make sure you're searching before, so that way you can see whether or not that is actually in the system before you go ahead and request it.
And Jim, I think it's probably worth just mentioning. We talk about this all the time, but searching, when you search in the system, it sometimes can be tricky, just because you got, especially if it's a supplier name that might be kind of unique. It's important to kind of not, I'm going to call it over search. And what I mean by that is, don't put too much in. Mm-hmm. Less is always better. So when you're searching for something, if the name is like 6 words long, don't try to put all the words in. Pick out a keyword and search for it and see what comes up. You might have to filter through some other records, but you're going to get a higher likelihood of finding what you want. And you have to remember that because you might think of it one way, it might be entered a different way. Our standard rule of thumb for entering supplier names is we enter the business name, the entity name that as it shows up on their website, and we're very consistent about that, and our team is really consistent about how they enter suppliers in the system. So but oftentimes from a search standpoint, it gets a little confusing because, like I said, you might have a supplier that has a really long name, and when you go to search for it, you're like, I can't find it. So just be careful. Like I said, less is always more. Mm-hmm. Or I should say that less will get you more. So yes, in that return. So
that's very true.
And then the other thing I want to say about suppliers is the processes that Jim showed you about adding, requesting a new supplier be added, or requesting a price or a product to be added. It's really important that you use those processes for those functions and not kind of go around the system. And it's not because we're trying to make your life harder. It's not because we're trying to be difficult about things. It is all because that it causes a tracking in the system so that we make sure we don't lose anything. Okay, we want to make sure that we have a tracking on it. We also want to make sure that we know when you requested it and we're following up in a timely manner. That's important to us too. We don't want things to sit too long. We want to make sure that you get something efficiently and quickly. So it also enables us to allocate our resources where the biggest need is. So when you use the help desk and you use those supplier management tools, it enables us to kind of redirect things to people that might have more time today to answer those questions or something. It's because we've got a really great team at GTO and they can all participate in these things. So it's really important that you use those features. And the final reason is you're going to get a response via email telling you the status of those when you put them in, which is even better. So yeah. So
yeah, again, we try to make sure that things don't fall through the cracks, and this kind of eliminates that, because if it's in the system, it goes through that system and we can see what is and is not finished and accomplished within the system. So it does make it much easier for all of us, and also things get done quickly. So
yes,
definitely get to it very, very fast.
it's your fastest route to a solution.
Absolutely.
So.
Absolutely.
So
our next question that we received is there a way to add basically a generic proposal to a group? Can you come up with something like a proposal template or something and attach it to a group until you're ready to actually fill everything in or put dates in, or things like that?
We get asked this question frequently, and our recommendation always is, when you first set up in the system, and if you're already in, make sure that you set up an account for your company, okay, in Sales Manager. And the reason for that is because under that account, you can save trip and proposal templates, as many as you want. You could have, a 3-day, 2-night trip to New York. You could have a 4-day, 3-night trip to New York. You can have, a 10-day trip to Los Angeles. But you can save all of those templates in there, and it enables you to, as proposal name is a feature that is a field that is on proposals that's internal only. It doesn't report on any files or anything like that, or any templates. But that way you can go into the trip and you can actually see all of the templates. You've got them named how you name things, so it's really easy for you to find what you need to find. And then what you need to do when you're ready, you get a client that says, hey, I want that 10-day trip to LA. Okay. You can go into that template. You can copy that template. Once you copy that template, you can actually reassign that proposal to the trip you have created for that client. Okay. Now, I caution you, before you do that, when you create that trip for the client, you need to make sure that the trip you've created for the client is the same number of days as the trip you are copying over. It would be really, it's talk about trying to shove a square peg in a round hole. If you're copying over a 10-day trip to Los Angeles and the trip that you have created for the client only has 8 days on it, you're going to have 2 days that the system doesn't know what to do with. So, and it might take its own choice as to which ones it cuts off. So, I'm being drastic about it, but I'm just saying be careful with the data. Just make sure that when you're doing that, the first thing you need to check is to make sure that those days line up. And they don't have to line up with the same dates. It's the number of days that matter. Right. So, absolutely. And
also with that, just remember that you can put a trip in the system and not have a proposal on it. So if you're not ready to build a proposal yet for a trip that you have coming in, or if they're not exactly sure, they're like, yes, we want to travel, we want to come with you, you can put all of their information in for a trip and not do a proposal for it. So that way, when the time comes and they're ready to move forward and you want to attach a proposal and then build onto it and correct the dates and things like that, then you can do that. But don't feel that you have to put the proposal in the same time that you actually add the trip to the system. And
that's actually a good point, Jim, that leads me to a question we get asked a lot that's related to this topic that I hadn't even thought about. We get asked a lot about the fact that under a single trip, can I add a proposal that's a 4-day, 3-night trip, a 3-day, 2-night trip? And right now, no. The answer to that question is no.
Right.
So if for a client, you need to do a 4-day version and a 3-day version, you're going to need right now to create 2 separate trips for that. And then whenever the client decides, you're just going to have to make the one inactive that you're not going to use. So that is not something we have solved right now because there's some other implications to it. But the workaround for that is just create a second trip and then make the one inactive that they don't choose when they decide to go with you and work on their trip moving forward. So that is another question related to this. But that is something we have talked about in how we solve that in the future. And it is definitely on our radar, which is, it kind of is a good segue to mention that, a lot of the things we've talked about so far on this Coach and Go, and this one in particular, really represent user input. And why I bring that up is I think it's a very important topic for all of our community to understand, is that we grow and we achieve a much better efficiency and a better system because of our users. Those ideas that we use don't come from us a lot of the time. They come from you using the system. And this copy proposal feature is actually one of those examples. And, for example, we've had several users ask about this, what we talked about first, that whole adding a second contact, creating a workaround, and then eventually a solution. All of that comes from user input. And so it's really important for us to hear from you and for you to engage. And when you're sitting there and you're working on something and you're a little frustrated with it, and we hope you're not that frustrated with it, but if you reach that level or you're sitting there and you think, hey, wait a minute, this would be better if it did X, Y, and Z. We really want you to share that with us. And whether you do it, the best way is always to share through the help desk because it gets in our development pipeline and it is. But the second best way would be to talk to your community architects like Jim and Joanne and Kevin, and have a conversation with them about your ideas, because they're part of our huddles and we're talking about those things on a daily basis. And so get those things into that conversation. Jim, I think that it's really important for us to think through that, and we want that feedback. I just got some feedback today from one of our users, which I think is really valuable, about how dates transfer from sales manager on the trip products to trip manager on the trip products. Really a brilliant solution, and most likely a pretty easy thing for us to plate up. But I was so thrilled that the team was sharing, our users were sharing that feedback with us. So.
Absolutely. And anytime any of us have conversations with our clients, or, even our perspectives and people that are going through demos, one of the things we talk about is the community aspect of what we're doing, and the fact that this the GTO system is not an out-of-the-box system that's just basically going to sit there. We were going to continue to work on this, and we're going to continue to keep it relevant for your business. And our goal is to give you the tools to be more efficient in what you're doing on a day-to-day basis. So we thrive on you giving us that feedback and giving us information as to how we can help you be more efficient in your business. So the ideas that you send to us are fantastic. And, you know, like Keith was saying, we have come up with several solutions, and we've changed and tweaked things to make it easier for you to use it. And the way that we've done that is by you giving us that feedback. So don't ever hesitate to contact us. And as we've said, we're going to be here. We're going to be a part of your team once you start using the GTO system. So don't be afraid to utilize us. We're here to kind of make the changes that you need for the system to work in the best way possible for what you're doing.
Well, and also, you know, I'm going to laugh because, and I hope you all laugh with me on this, but sometimes you'll give us a suggestion, and it's a big system. There's a lot of features in this system, and you know, you might be talking to me, you might be talking to Jim, and you know, we all kind of have our apps that we're really super good at. Okay. And so that's what makes us such a great team with the GTO team. And I am really proud of all of our team. And so you might get a suggestion, and you might make a suggestion as a user and part of our community to us. And I'll go, oh, that's a great suggestion. We should do that. And I might come back to you and say, guess what? The system already does that, because I didn't realize that we had that feature already built into this app that I don't spend a lot of time in. So just know that could happen too, and it's okay. But there's often times that our development team is working on things all the time, and they might get something rolled out that we're still in testing that I might ask on the day that they're just getting ready to release it. So you know, it is a continually evolving system. And I can't even, there are so many, when Jim and I were talking about this earlier today, there are so many examples of user input that has turned into meaningful change in the system that it was hard for me when we were talking about this to come up with the best example for it. And I don't even know if I have even yet, because we've had so many moments where users or potential users have said to us, what about this? Or have you thought about looking at it this way? That have turned into long-term development solutions that have really made meaningful change in the system. So you're part of the community, and speak up. We want to hear it. That's what we want.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, you know, if there are questions that you have about, like what Keith was saying, we all have our apps that we're a little bit better at understanding and explaining. But if you have questions on specific apps and their functionality and what they do, ask any of us, and we will make sure to find the expert in that app to get the question answered or to find out the best solution for you. So it's not just going to sit with one of us. If you ask it from me, it's the entire team that's going to sit together and develop the answer or the solution for you. So you're actually working with the entire team, no matter who you're talking to directly. It's coming by all of us, which also brings us up. Go ahead.
I was going to say, that's a great segue to talking about group accounting, because you're looking at two people who are not experts in group accounting, you know, and so I want to share with you, Christina, who's on our team, who's fantastic, is our group accounting expert. I would say that she's probably gone beyond expert to guru, or like, I don't know if there's another higher level, she's probably already there. But she shared an answer for one of our potential clients yesterday, just describing group accounting, and it was brilliant. And I wanted to kind of recap it for everybody, because it's hard sometimes to understand the flow of everything, and really understanding where group accounting fits in the mix of things is really important. And you know, what she said really in her response was that group accounting is not trying to replace a real accounting system. It's not what it's for. Okay, it's not whether you have QuickBooks or whatever you use. It's not replacing that. Group accounting's function is specifically to the trip. Okay, and what I mean by that is it's not necessarily connected to the customer or the supplier directly. It's a very indirect ... line to those through the trip. And what group accounting is designed to do is to keep track of the finances of the trip and what happens, the inflows and outflows related to that trip, whether it's customer receivables or supplier payables, any of those things. That's what its responsibility as an app is to do. It's to keep track of those things and then help us really look at the end to how we did compared to like where we started in that process. Okay. What it does not do is help you keep track of your bank and where the money is at the bank and all of that stuff and all those things that other really good accounting softwares do. Okay. And so it's important that, it can show you the profitability of a trip, but from a company financial management standpoint, the only thing it can provide is related to those specific trips. And then, of course, all of the trips together. So just wanted to make sure I clarified that. And people have asked if we're ever going to connect to an accounting software. I'm not going to say never, but I'm not also going to say soon. So it's sometime between soon and never it will happen. So I don't know when that is, but it's definitely something we've discussed, as anybody who works in finance and anybody who works in technology can tell you, and we all know it's complex. It's a very complex issue, and it has to be done very carefully. So we want to be very cognizant of that and respecting people's, kind of how they handle their accounting, things like that. So for right now, group accounting is basically your trip financial management. That's what it is. So
basically it's going to work in tandem with whatever their office accounting programs for their entire business is. It's going to work in tandem with what they're doing.
Correct.
Okay.
And if you have more questions about it, like I said, I really appreciated how Christina framed this. And so I wanted to bring it up today. I mentioned to Jim that I wanted to share it today because she really did a great job. And if you have questions about group accounting, we're certainly happy to connect you with Christina, because she will do a far better job answering your questions about that than either Jim or I will do. All I will do is confuse you. So it is better to have somebody who knows what they're talking about. So
yes, I mean, that is the perfect example of when that question was asked of the two of us. The accounting questions were asked, and we just sort of were like, we'll ask Christina and we'll make sure to get a response to you as soon as we can.
Absolutely.
So there are times when we definitely know our limitations as far as how easy it is to explain these things. And so it may take us a few hours, but we'll get the answers for you from the people who actually know the functionality. So we're never going to just kind of give you an answer that we're not sure of.
and it's funny because that really highlights a point of why I feel the GTO team is so strong, is because that each of us have that a different focus in what we have our in-depth guru knowledge. Sierra from a management of the suppliers and just how that data is managed, which is just amazing, and Corey from several aspects of the system, and Steven and all of our marketing team and the different focuses that they have. Everybody has their forte on this, and we really, from a team standpoint, really kind of hum together. And Joanne and Kevin and Jim all have their specialties within the community architect team, and it's really great when we put all these pieces together. It's a real benefit to the community and to all of the users because of situations just like Jim mentioned. When we have somebody who needs to know specific things, we've got a person that can answer that. But also when we're trying to build new features from your user input, we have somebody that when we all sit down and we have those development meetings together and those visioning meetings about where we're going with things, it enables us to all make sure that all of the bases are covered in that conversation, because we've got people that have those specialties. So we're here from a community standpoint for you, and we all want to support you. So
absolutely. Absolutely. And, this is, if you have any more questions, we've got a few more minutes. So this is your last chance to ask us any other questions that you may have today. Just to let you know, coming up in future GTO Coaching Goes, we do have some updates to the system that are going to be happening. So we're going to be rolling out a little more functionality as far as how suppliers themselves are going to be able to be a bigger part of what suppliers are actually listed in the supplier manager. So we're going to have the ability for our suppliers to actually enter some information that would then go by our gurus to make sure everything is accurate and put in the right way. And so we would be able to get things uploaded faster and hopefully get a lot more suppliers in the system. And when we do a GTO Coach and Go on this, and also when we send out updates about what's happening within the system, as our users, it would be great if you could spread the word too. So if you are having discussions with the people you have the relationships with out in the supplier world, let them know about it and let them know that there is a way that they can go ahead and put their information in for us. So that way we can go ahead and get them added to the system and more people can then use their products. So,
and Jim, it'll give you, the supplier portal, which will be live this week, which is great. Will give suppliers also the ability to get their their updates and their new products out to the GTO community faster. So it's really going to streamline and make that process more efficient. The process of entering things is super easy. You just kind of chuck through the questions and you hit submit and off you go. You can even submit pictures, things like that. It's great. It'll be right on the GTO website. You'll see it go live here within probably the next 24 hours. And again, that's where Jim and Joanne can really help you. Because if you're already in our system, we've already created a login. They'll be reaching out to you to talk about that. But Jim's going to share more about that on an upcoming GTO Coach and Go. But really exciting news for our supplier relationships.
Mm-hmm. One of the questions that we've been getting a little more feedback on is what our next week's topic is going to be. Next week, we're going to be featuring customizing your GTO dashboards, and Corey's going to be joining us on the functionality and the features of those widgets that appear on each of the dashboards for each of our apps. You may have a calendar of activities. You may have a calendar or a bar graph of trips that are up there. Those can be customized. And so next week, we're going to be discussing how that customization works and what you as a company can do to get information to us so we can make sure that they're functioning the way that you want and that at a glance, you'll be able to get the information that you need on each of those dashboards. And each dashboard that you're using, whether it's Sales Manager, Trip Manager, Group Accounting, they do have their own widgets that are on there that will give you more information depending upon which of the apps you're actually working in. So that we're going to be featuring next week. So think about questions that you may have. And if you want to send them to us in advance, of course, you're welcome to do that. Otherwise, next week, you can go ahead and click in that comment section and submit your questions. And Corey will be answering those as well next week when we do our GTO Coach and Go.
And I actually, Jim, it's funny that that's next week's topic because I actually had a conversation with one of our users this morning, and I already have a question to share with you when that comes around next week. So, yes, yeah. So a question and a suggestion, no less. So we've already got our first one in.
That's fantastic. Well, first of all, Keith, thank you for joining us today and taking us through a lot of this information. Again, as we point out, I think basically every week, this is a fluid system. This is a system that is constantly being tweaked and updated. And we do rely on you, our users, to make sure to give us the feedback on how we could make this better for you or ideas that you may have. Don't ever think that your ideas are silly or ridiculous, because a lot of the ideas that you have will pass by us and we're like, oh my gosh, we can't believe we didn't think of that. Or, oh yeah, that would make things a lot easier. So they do get put into the pipeline. And again, as Keith pointed out today, many of the things that have happened over these past few weeks are because of your input. And so we do thank you for that. Every week, I do mention that we are part of a community. We're one big community that's working together to try to elevate group travel and to create that business without boundaries, create an environment where you can work efficiently and have more time that you can go out and court new business and bring new business into your company. So any way that we can help you with that, by all means, reach out to us. We'll always be here for you. So on behalf of all of us at Group Travel Odyssey, we want to thank you for joining us on today's GTO Coach and Go. We hope you have a fantastic week, and we will see you next Thursday at 1 o'clock. Take care.
Bye.